My world didn't just crumble that day. It detonated. Not with a shout, but with 7 cold words on a screen. 7 words that took 3 days of my life, 3 days of love, effort, and anticipation, and reduced them to absolute soul-crushing silence. We're celebrating at his parents' this year. You understand, right? I read it, my hands sticky with flour, brushing egg wash over a pie crust. My heart, already so open, felt like it shattered on impact. I didn't answer right away. What could I say? Of course, darling. No problem at all. I knew that script by heart. I'd been rehearsing the role of the accommodating mother for decades. It was Christmas morning. The dining room gleamed, set for 6. The good tablecloth, crisp linen napkins, wine glasses polished until they caught every glint of light. The smell of roasted turkey, skin crisp to golden perfection, filled every corner of the house. Cinnamon hung heavy from a batch of snickerdoodles cooling on the counter. Bing Crosby crooned softly from the record player, just like always. Only there was no one to hear him. Just me. In a dress I hadn't worn in years, hair set the night before, lipstick freshly applied. Standing in an empty living room, I sat by the window for what felt like an eternity, the one that faced the street, just in case a car pulled up, even by mistake. It never did. The snow had started sometime around dawn, soft and quiet, falling like secrets. Wilmington always got snow for Christmas. At least something stayed dependable. Eventually I stood, poured myself a small glass of wine, and did the one thing I knew I shouldn't. I opened my daughter's Instagram stories. Of course I did. And there she was. Laura, my only daughter, laughing in front of someone else's tree. One of those giant fake firs with perfectly matched ornaments. Her husband, Greg, handed out gifts in his usual collared shirt, looking like he belonged on the cover of a magazine titled Suburban Bliss. Their 2 boys tore through wrapping paper like wild animals, shrieking with joy over drones and gaming headsets. The caption read, "So grateful for family time." My hands went cold. I didn't feel angry. Not exactly. Not yet. Just used. Like the crumpled wrapping paper after the presents are opened, tossed aside, no longer needed. She hadn't even told the boys. I could see it in their carefree faces. They had no idea their grandmother had spent 3 full days cooking, that she had stayed up until midnight basting a turkey she could barely lift, that she had driven to 3 different stores to find the exact chocolate Laura used to like as a child. She told them something vague I knew. "Grandma's too tired." Grandma said next year. Grandma understands. And I did understand. Oh yes, I understood more than they thought. I turned off the phone and stared at the cold turkey resting proudly on the sideboard. 3 days of preparation. What for? Not a soul would eat it. The message had come in just before midnight, and I'd stared at it so long I barely slept. Those 7 words echoed, crawling into every corner of the house. You understand, right? I replayed it in my head while folding away the leftover table settings. I kept the plates on the table longer than I should have, part of me hoping someone might still walk in. But of course no one did. The cranberry sauce had dried at the edges. The butter on the little glass dish had gone soft. I scraped the dishes into the trash one by one. The turkey? It would last me until March if I cared to keep it. I didn't. There was no point in pretending anymore, not even to myself. In the hall closet, I found the dress I'd planned for Christmas Eve. Deep green velvet with a brooch at the shoulder. I hadn't worn it in over a decade, maybe more. It was the kind of dress that whispered, "I made an effort. I still matter." I put it on now, even though there was no one to see it. Then I sat down at the vanity to touch up the makeup I'd done the night before. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked. The lipstick was still fresh, but it didn't suit the mouth underneath. My face, lined and careful, felt foreign. When had my cheeks begun to sag like that? When had my hair turned so white at the temples? I used to think age came gradually like the seasons. Now I knew better. comes in an instant. One day you're a mother preparing Christmas for her little girl. And the next, you're a forgotten old woman in a silent house. Still, I smoothed my hair with my fingers. Still, I kept the dress on. I wouldn't let them take that from me, too. Around noon, I made tea and sat with it at the kitchen table. The mug had "Best Mom Ever" printed on it, a cheap thing from a Mother's Day years ago. I almost laughed at the irony. I sipped slowly, watching the snow gather outside. The street was quiet. No kids playing, no cars moving. Just the sound of wind pressing against the windows, soft and constant. There was a time, I remembered, when Laura used to beg me to leave up the Christmas lights until February. "They make everything happier," she'd say, tugging on my coat. That was back when she still thought of this house as home. Back when she was mine. By the way, if you're still with me, still wondering how I managed to pick up the pieces, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories and moments of quiet triumph are coming your way. I heard the mailbox click shut and went to check, grateful for any distraction. Inside was a single envelope, plain white, no return address. A generic card was tucked inside, printed in gold foil. "Wishing you joy this season." Below that, in my daughter's hurried handwriting, were 3 words. "Sorry, things changed." I turned the card over. Nothing else. Things changed. Yes, that part at least was true. I placed the card beside the others on the mantelpiece. Cards from neighbors, from the pharmacy, from the local community center. Hollow greetings, but still something. Laura's card looked the smallest among them, the most meaningless, like it had tried and failed to be an apology. I thought about calling her, just to ask gently why she didn't tell me the truth sooner, why she let me prepare everything, why she didn't even say sorry with her voice. But I didn't call because deep down I already knew the answer. She hadn't thought it would matter. The hours passed, but I didn't turn on the television. I couldn't bear to hear the canned laughter, the jingling commercials with their perfect families in matching pajamas. Instead, I cleaned the kitchen. Not because it needed it. I'd already wiped every surface twice, but because I needed something to keep my hands from trembling. By the time evening came, I'd peeled off the green velvet dress and folded it back into the tissue paper I'd kept it in for years. I slipped into my house robe, the one with the fraying sleeve. The silence in the house had thickened. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of witness. No voices, no footsteps, no curious questions from grandchildren about ornaments or what time dinner would be. Just my own breathing. My own thoughts. My own fault. I sat in the living room and let the quiet surround me. For a moment I closed my eyes and tried to imagine them arriving. After all, Laura's laugh a little too high-pitched when she was trying to overcompensate. The kids barreling through the door with their backpacks still on. Greg pretending to be polite while checking his phone under the table. But the moment faded quickly. That wasn't coming. I knew it now with a certainty that hollowed out my ribs. When I finally opened my eyes, it was because of a sound I hadn't expected. A notification ping from my phone. My heart jumped. For a moment, I allowed myself the ridiculous hope that it might be a message from Laura. Something heartfelt, a real apology. But it wasn't. It was her story update. My finger hovered over the screen. I could scroll past it. I could choose not to look. But of course I tapped it. It was a video. The kids unwrapping another pile of presents in what looked like a warm, bustling living room. Laura's caption read, "Nothing better than being surrounded by love. Merry Christmas from our family to yours." Our family. I wasn't part of that anymore, was I? And then came the next clip. Greg's mother lifting a dish out of the oven, laughing. Mom's famous lasagna. Christmas tradition. Laura's voice chimed in. My lasagna had been the Christmas tradition for 29 years. I'd started making it the year after her father died. When she was 12 and said she wanted something different for Christmas Eve. I'd spent that whole afternoon figuring out a recipe that would feel special and still comfort her. She used to say, Yours is better than any restaurant. I watched the video twice, not because I enjoyed the pain, but because I needed to believe it was real. That she had said that she'd filmed it and shared it and tagged it. Family. I put the phone down gently, as if it were something fragile. That was when I realized I hadn't cried. Not once, not yet. And I still didn't. Instead, I got up and walked to the cabinet in the hallway. The top drawer stuck a little. Always had. I forced it open. Inside was the old metal file box where I kept the paperwork. Bank statements, old receipts, copies of the checks I'd written over the years. A folder labeled Laura, in thick blue marker. I pulled it out and took it to the table. There were checks for the down payment on their house. The first year of private school for the boys. A loan for Greg's business. $8,000 with a hopeful note attached. Just until things stabilize. Thank you, Mom. They never paid it back. I'd stopped expecting it long ago. It wasn't just the money. It was the way I'd slipped into the background of their lives. Always there, always helpful, always silent. The dependable one. The safe one. The one who could be postponed. That was the cost of being kind too long. You get mistaken for furniture. I sat at the table, surrounded by these scraps of proof, and I asked myself something I'd never dared to before. Would they even notice if I stopped helping? Would they notice if I stopped being available? Would they miss me, or just the convenience of me? And for the first time in years, I thought I might want to find out. I hadn't opened the photo albums in years. They sat on the bottom shelf of the living room cabinet, gathering dust. Heavy books with padded covers, gold-embossed edges, little slips of paper sticking out here and there from where I'd tucked in extra snapshots that hadn't made it onto the pages. I pulled out the biggest one and carried it to the couch, laying it on my lap like a fragile child. The first photo was of Laura's second Christmas. She was standing in the middle of the living room in a knitted red jumper with 2 missing buttons. Her father had taken the picture. I remembered it clearly because we had almost no money that year, and I'd baked cookies from leftover flour and butter, wrapping them in brown paper and string. Laura had eaten 5 of them in one sitting and declared it the best Christmas ever. I turned the pages slowly, watching her grow with each turn. Here she was at 10, grinning wide in front of a snowman. At 15, sullen in a too small coat, arms crossed but still there. 18, her senior picture, taped in because she hadn't wanted it framed. Then her wedding. Then the babies. Then slowly less of her. Fewer photos, gaps between pages. I reached one of the last entries. Christmas 5 years ago. That had been the last one where they all came. I remember because Laura brought a dish of store-bought salad, and Greg kept checking the time. The boys had opened their gifts so fast they barely looked at what they'd gotten. One of them asked if they could leave early to go to Grandma Elaine's, Greg's mother. That had stung. But I'd smiled through it. I always smiled through it. I closed the album gently and set it aside. The heaviness in my chest wasn't sadness anymore. It was something else, something steadier. I was beginning to see the pattern, not just of Christmases but of years. How I'd been slowly moved from center to margin. It hadn't started this year. This year was just when it became obvious. The doorbell rang. I nearly jumped. No one rang my bell on holidays. Not anymore. My first thought was that it might be a mistake. A delivery gone to the wrong house. But then I heard the soft tapping against the window. 3 light knocks. I stood and opened the door. It was Emily, my granddaughter. 16. Long-legged and soft-eyed, wrapped in a coat too big for her, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Grandma," she said, lifting one hand in a shy wave, "I brought you some pie from over there." She gestured vaguely, and I knew what she meant. Her other grandmother's house. The real Christmas party. I blinked at her, surprised. "You came all this way?" She shrugged. "I told Mom I wasn't feeling well. I wanted to see you." Her eyes searched mine for permission. I stepped back and opened the door wider. Inside, she looked around, taking in the table still set for 6, the untouched food on the sideboard, the dimmed lights. I saw her throat move as she swallowed. "I didn't know they weren't coming," she said softly. "They just said it would be easier, less pressure for you." I gave a small laugh, dry and without joy. "Less pressure." "I'm sorry," she said. "I think Mom didn't want to upset you. Or maybe she didn't want to hear what you'd say if she told you." "She didn't have to hear anything. A message is easy to ignore." Emily looked down at the pie in her hands. "It's pumpkin. I know it's not your favorite. I just thought maybe you'd like some company." I set the pie on the counter and reached for the kettle. "Then let's have tea," I said. She helped me pour it. We sat at the table, just the two of us. I didn't ask her what the others were doing. I didn't need to. I knew. She told me about school, about her friend Olivia's new puppy, about a book she was reading for English class. She spoke quietly, respectfully, with a kind of warmth that felt like balm on a wound I hadn't realized was open. At one point she looked around the room again. "You really did all this?" "I do it every year. For them. For me," I said after a pause. "At least that's what I used to tell myself." Emily nodded slowly. "You deserve better." I looked at her carefully. 16. Yes, but she had an old soul. She saw more than most did. That night after she left, I sat at the table alone again. But it felt different. Not better, not easier, but different. Because now, at least someone had seen it. Had seen me. And sometimes that's enough to start something changing. She hadn't even told Emily. That realization came to me later, after the dishes had been put away. After I'd placed the pie she brought into the fridge with a little label so I wouldn't forget it was hers. The house was quiet again, but not quite as hollow. Her presence had left something behind. An echo of warmth, a reminder. But it also sharpened the sting. Laura hadn't warned her, not even a hint. Emily had believed they were spending Christmas together like always. I could tell from the way her face changed when she walked into the house and saw the table set, the roast untouched, the gifts unopened. She'd been embarrassed. Not of me, but for me. I sat back down at the kitchen table, picked up my phone and scrolled through my messages again. Nothing from Laura since the night before. Just the one sentence that still hung in the air like smoke. "We're celebrating at his parents' this year. You understand, right?" I did understand, and that was the problem. I put the phone down and reached for the manila envelope I pulled from the drawer earlier. Inside were the bank printouts, quarterly summaries, regular transfers, the history of all the help I'd given over the years. Line after line of quiet generosity. Laura's tuition, her first apartment, the deposit on their current house, the orthodontist bills for the boys, the bridge loan when Greg lost his job for a few months and they needed to keep up with the mortgage. And Christmas gifts. Not just toys and clothes for the kids, but checks slipped discreetly into cards, handed over with a quiet just in case. I never made a show of it. That's not who I was. But maybe I should have. I took out a pen and a notebook and started writing down numbers. Not to keep a tally, not to demand repayment. That wasn't the point. I wanted to see it clearly, to know what exactly I had given. By the end of the page, the number made me pause. Over the last 20 years, I had transferred to them through gifts, bills, emergencies, loans never returned, just over $138,000. I set the pen down. It wasn't the money. If you'd asked me even yesterday, I'd have said I'd give it all again happily for them. But tonight something had shifted. I no longer believed they'd do the same for me. I wasn't even worth a dinner table or an honest explanation. I sat there for a long time, not moving. Then I picked up the phone and scrolled to my bank's number. The after-hours line rang 3 times before a polite voice answered. "Good evening, West Garden Savings and Loans. This is Dana speaking. How may I assist you?" "Yes, hello Dana. My name is Marlene Stanley. I'd like to inquire about halting a series of automatic transfers from my account." "Of course, Mrs. Stanley. May I confirm some details with you first? She went through the standard verification. Birth date, address, last 4 digits of my checking. I answered calmly, my voice steady. Once verified, she continued. Now, can you tell me which transfers you'd like to adjust? All of them, I said. Every standing order to my daughter Laura or to Greg. Mortgage contributions, school fees, the monthly insurance premium for their car. Everything. Dana paused. That's quite a list, ma'am. Are you sure you'd like to suspend all of them? I'm not suspending, I said. I'm ending them permanently. Another pause. Understood. I'll place a hold immediately. For full termination, you'll need to sign off at your local branch. We open at 9 tomorrow. I'll be there, I said. She confirmed the changes and wished me a good night. I hung up and sat in the quiet once more. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was clarity. For years I told myself I was doing what mothers do. Giving, helping, smoothing the way. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's what love looks like in a way. But love without respect curdles into obligation. And obligation is not family. They had taken everything I offered except me. That was about to change. I woke early the next morning. Before the sun had risen. The light outside was still a dull gray. The kind of winter morning that never quite becomes day. I moved slowly, not from weakness but from intention. Each step, each motion felt deliberate, like I was settling into a decision that had waited far too long to be made. I made my tea without hurry. No radio, no television. Just the soft clink of the spoon against the cup, and the faint hum of the refrigerator. At 8:30 I was dressed and ready. Wearing the same coat I'd worn to Laura's college graduation. Dark blue wool with silver buttons. A gift from my late sister. It still fit, still made me feel like a woman who knew her mind. The bank was quiet when I arrived, the carpet still showing the marks from the vacuum cleaner. The windows fogged slightly at the corners from the cold outside. The woman behind the counter looked up with a practiced smile. Good morning. How can I help you? I'd like to finalize the cancellation of all automatic transfers to the Sheehan household, I said clearly. My name is Marlene Stanley. Dana from the night service placed a hold yesterday. She blinked, her smile faltering slightly. Of course, let me get someone from accounts. I waited in a side office, the kind with old magazines and a potted plant in need of water. A man in a gray suit appeared a few minutes later, folder in hand. Mrs. Stanley, I'm Robert. Let's go over the details. He laid out the papers neatly highlighted. There were more than I expected. Mortgage supplements, utility reimbursements, a recurring educational fund transfer labeled EDU Fund Sheehan. That's for their boys' tuition, I said. I'd like that one canceled too. He looked up briefly then nodded. All of them. All of them. He passed me the documents. I signed without hesitation. When I handed the pen back, he paused. Would you like to designate a new beneficiary for any of the accounts? We often see clients shift support to a grandchild or... Yes, I said. My granddaughter, Emily Sheehan. Open a new savings account in her name, under my supervision for now. I'd like to redirect the tuition support there. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and wrote the instruction in the margin. The meeting was done in under 20 minutes. As I stepped back out into the cold, a strange feeling came over me. Not lightness exactly, but something adjacent. Like I had finally stepped out from under a shadow I hadn't realized I was standing in. The world hadn't changed, but I had. And that would be enough. When I got home, the answering machine was blinking. I pressed play. 3 messages. The first was from Laura. Mom. Hey. I wanted to check in. I saw that the tuition payment didn't go through this morning, and, I just assumed it was a bank error. Anyway, call me. Okay? Love you. The second was shorter, her voice tighter. Hi again. Just wanted to say we were surprised you didn't respond to the Christmas card. The boys were asking if you got it. We hope you're okay. The third message came barely an hour after the second. Greg this time. Hi Marlene. It's Greg. I don't want to intrude, but Laura's really upset. She said you stopped some bank things and now Emily's saying weird stuff. Can we talk? Maybe there's been a misunderstanding. I didn't return the calls. Instead, I made a list. Not of grievances. Of boundaries. Lines that should have been drawn long ago. I sat with it looking at each one. Then I picked up the phone, but not to call Laura. I called my lawyer. Francis met me at the door of his office with that same quiet nod he'd given me years ago when I came in after Henry died. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. That was one of the reasons I kept him as my attorney all these years. He listened first and he never acted surprised. I need to update my will, I said simply as I removed my gloves and folded them into my bag. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Of course. Same distribution, or are we revisiting that too? We're revisiting everything. He didn't flinch, just took out a pad and clicked his pen. Walked me through it. I laid it out clearly. The house was to remain in my name until my passing, with a legal provision barring any transfer or pressure to sell. All financial assets were to be placed in trust, with Emily as primary beneficiary and me as trustee while I lived. Laura and Greg were to be removed from any discretionary access. No more default inheritors. No more assumptions. I'm not doing it to punish anyone, I said after a pause. I just need to protect what's mine, and to give to someone who hasn't treated me like a bank. Francis nodded slowly. You don't need to justify it to me, Marlene. I've seen this happen more often than I'd like. I let that sit for a moment. Did you ever feel like you disappeared while still being alive? I asked quietly. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. Every Tuesday, when my grown son calls only because his car insurance is due. I smiled a little bitterly. Then you know. He began drafting the documents, reading each section aloud. When we reached the clause about the trust for Emily, I felt something settle inside me, a steadiness. I wasn't angry anymore. I was claiming my name back, my worth. I'll have the finalized papers by Friday, he said as he stood to see me out. We'll need a witness when you sign. I'll arrange for that. Thank you, Francis. He touched my arm gently. You're doing the right thing. I walked home afterward even though it was cold. The crisp air helped clear my head. I passed the coffee shop Laura used to love as a teenager, back when we'd sit in the corner booth and she'd dream out loud about the life she wanted. I wondered if she ever remembered those days, if she ever missed them. When I got home, the mail was waiting in the box. A bank notice, 2 catalogs, and a hand-addressed envelope with my name written in a hurried, uneven scroll. It was from Emily. Inside was a folded letter written on notebook paper. No card, no embellishment, just her words. Dear Grandma, I don't know what's going on exactly, but I can guess. Dad and Mom are acting weird, and I heard them arguing last night. They're saying you're overreacting and being dramatic. But I know you. You don't do things without a reason. I just want you to know I saw the table. I saw the food. I saw how you looked when you opened the door. I'll never forget it. Whatever happens, I love you and I'm on your side. Love, Emily. I folded the letter back carefully, smoothing the creases. Then I placed it on the mantel next to the oldest photo of Laura as a baby. And for the first time in days I let myself cry. Not from grief but from being seen. By the next morning the messages had shifted tone. The first voicemail was Laura again. Her voice was thinner now, more measured. Mom, I'm sorry if we hurt you. I didn't mean for things to come out this way. It's just the holidays are stressful, and Greg's parents had already made plans, and I thought maybe it would be easier. I should have talked to you. Please call me. The second was shorter. Mom, Greg says the mortgage payment bounced again. Can you please check with the bank? Maybe they made a mistake. We're getting late notices. And then a text. We need to talk. This is serious now. I stared at the screen for a long moment before turning the phone over, face down on the table. The silence that followed felt different now. Less like absence and more like calm. I spent the afternoon going through old files, reorganizing the folders. I removed Greg's name from the power of attorney authorization and placed Emily's in his place, though it would only take effect after my passing. I updated contact information on all insurance accounts. I unsubscribed from the newsletters Laura had signed me up for years ago. Mostly shopping and meal services I never used. It felt like scrubbing a wall clean. When the doorbell rang around 4 p.m., I knew who it was before I opened it. Laura stood there, coat unbuttoned, breath visible in the winter air. She didn't have her usual lipstick on. Her hair was pinned up in a hurry. "Mom," she said, stepping forward. I didn't move from the doorway. She hesitated, then smiled, tight and unfamiliar. "Can I come in?" I opened the door wider slowly. She walked inside and glanced around, as if seeing the house for the first time. Her eyes caught on the table, now bare. The plates put away. The kitchen clean. "No Christmas decorations?" she asked. I took them down. "Oh." She sat on the edge of the couch, her purse still clutched in her lap like a shield. I remained standing. "I got your message," she began, though I hadn't sent any. "About the payments, the accounts, the changes." I nodded once. They were long overdue. She blinked, then tried to laugh. "Mom, come on. This is a lot." "Yes," I said. "It is." She looked up at me. "Why now?" I sat across from her slowly, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to look her in the eye. Because for years I gave without asking, without requiring thanks. I assumed love meant making things easier for you. "It did," she said quickly. "It always meant a lot." "No," I interrupted gently. "It didn't. It became expected. It became convenient. You didn't ask me to cook this year because you didn't want to say the truth. That I wasn't invited." Her face flushed. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," I said calmly. She fell silent. "I saw your stories, Laura. The tree, the food, your other mother's lasagna." She looked down. "I didn't ask for you to choose me," I said. "But I won't keep handing you pieces of myself just to stay included." She didn't respond. She sat very still. "I'm not angry," I continued. "But I'm done pretending. You don't get to treat me like I'm optional, and then panic when the checks stop clearing." Her shoulders dropped. And for a moment I saw the child in her again. The one who used to crawl into my lap on stormy nights. "I didn't know you felt this way," she said softly. "You didn't ask." She looked at her hands. "We can fix it," she whispered. "We can talk about how to adjust things." I shook my head. "You're not here to fix it. You're here because the money stopped." She flinched but didn't argue. "I'm not shutting the door on you," I said. "But I am closing the account." She looked up, eyes wet, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't reach for a tissue to hand her. She stayed another 20 minutes, trying different tones. Gentle, logical, wounded. But none of it held. "Not anymore. I just don't understand why you're doing this now," she said again as she stood near the door, her voice beginning to fray. "It feels cruel." I looked at her squarely. "Laura, I've spent decades being careful not to hurt you. Maybe that's what allowed this in the first place." She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Outside, the wind had picked up. I could hear the trash bin lids rattling down the street. Laura looked older to me somehow in that moment. Not because of her face, but because I finally saw her without the lens of obligation. Just a woman. A woman who had gotten too comfortable standing on my shoulders. "I'll tell the boys you're not mad at them," she said after a pause, brushing invisible dust from her coat. "I'm not," I said. And I hope one day you'll understand this isn't punishment. It's correction. She left quietly. No slammed doors, no tears. Just a strange kind of unfinished silence. I stood by the window and watched her drive off, then went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. The quiet returned like an old friend. Not harsh, just present. Just mine. That evening I called Emily. She answered on the second ring. Grandma. Hi, darling. I just wanted to hear your voice. You okay? She asked, instantly alert. I'm fine. I had a visitor today. There was a pause. Mom. Yes. We talked. I think she's beginning to realize something changed. Emily didn't say anything. I could hear her breathing on the other end. I'm setting some new things in place, I continued. You'll see the documents soon, the trust, the legal updates. I want you to have some protections. Not just financially. Her voice came out small. Why me? Because you're the only one who looked me in the eye that day. The only one who came. Another pause, then a tremble in her words. I'm really glad I did. So am I. We talked a little longer about school, about the new semester starting soon. When we hung up, I felt steadier. Not triumphant, just anchored. Later that night, I went through the kitchen drawers and threw out things I didn't need. Old rubber bands, appliance manuals from microwaves I no longer owned, takeout menus no one ever ordered from. It felt like clearing space for something else. Something honest. The next morning Greg called. I let it go to voicemail. Then he texted. Can we talk? Laura says things got emotional. I think we need to figure out what this means. Also, Emily's tuition. Will that still be covered? She's panicking. I didn't answer, but I opened a new message window and typed only this. Emily's covered. You are not. I didn't sign it. Let the silence speak this time. By the end of that week, the shift had reached full circulation. I hadn't posted anything, hadn't told anyone outside my lawyer and the bank. But still it spread quietly, efficiently, like news always does in families that thrive on unspoken hierarchies. The phone rang less now. That was its own kind of message. On Friday morning, I bundled up and walked to the bakery 2 blocks down. I hadn't been there in months. The girl behind the counter didn't recognize me, but the smell did. Yeast and cinnamon and warm dough, familiar as breath. I bought a small loaf and 2 rolls, wrapped them neatly, and walked home slowly, letting the air sting my cheeks. At home, I found an envelope on the doorstep. No name, no return address, just a handwritten note inside. You've made your point. We get it. That was it. Not signed, not explained, not even folded neatly. I placed it in the trash without hesitation. 'Cause no, they didn't get it. Not yet. Getting it would mean understanding I wasn't a withdrawal machine with a maternal smile. Getting it would mean not treating my choices like a tantrum. That afternoon, Emily dropped by unexpectedly. She had a knit scarf wrapped around her neck and brought a grocery bag with 2 oranges and a jar of jam. I traded shifts with a girl at work, she said shyly. Figured I'd come help you put away the holiday stuff. We took down the wreath first, then the old ornaments. She asked about each one, where I'd gotten it, how long I'd had it. It felt like building something new between us, story by story, piece by piece. When we got to the box labeled fragile, she stopped. Did you really cancel everything for them? I looked at her. Yes. Emily bit her lip. They're upset. I'm sure. She hesitated. Dad said you've changed. I smiled gently. I've remembered who I am. She didn't press. Instead, she held up a tiny porcelain angel and asked where I'd found it. We spent an hour that way, not talking about the others, just us. When she left, I stood by the door longer than usual. I watched her walk away down the street, scarf trailing behind her like a ribbon. She didn't look back. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't have to. She knew I was still standing there, still loving her without condition, but no longer without boundary. And that made all the difference. Saturday morning brought a different kind of stillness. Not the lonely kind, but the deliberate kind, like something had settled in the walls, like the house had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. I spent most of the morning writing letters, not dramatic declarations, just quiet things, notes to myself really. One was titled, "What I Won't Do Anymore." I listed them carefully. I won't apologize for saying no. I won't downplay how much something hurt just to keep peace. I won't let love be measured in money. I won't confuse usefulness with worth. By the time I finished, I felt lighter. Around noon, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the message played. "Mrs. Stanley, this is Linda Carter from Southridge Academy's finance office. I wanted to confirm we received the updated payment instructions for Emily's tuition. The trust account you set up has been processed, and the next semester is fully covered. Thank you for the clarity. It really helped us move quickly." I sat very still, then allowed myself a small smile. There. That was what real giving looked like. Quiet. Clean. With no strings attached. Not because someone expected it or because I was afraid to be left out, but because I chose to. 2. I received an email. Subject line, "Please read." It was from Laura. I didn't open it right away. I made tea, took a slice of bread, let the kettle whistle before lifting it. Only then, when I was seated at the table, did I click. "Mom, I don't know how to say everything I need to. I've rewritten this message 5 times. Nothing sounds right. I didn't handle Christmas well. I know that now. I didn't tell you because I didn't want the guilt or the conversation. That was cowardly. I thought you'd be okay. You always are. That's the problem, isn't it? You're always okay. And I've used that as an excuse. I didn't mean to make you feel small or invisible, but I did. I can see that now. We're struggling to process all of this. The money, the trust, the changes. Feels sudden, even though I know it probably wasn't. You've always been generous. Maybe too generous. I think I got used to it. We all did. It became background. But I miss you. I miss the you that made holidays feel safe. I miss the smell of your kitchen. I miss how you always knew when something was wrong. I don't want to lose you. Not like this. If you're open to it, I'd like to come over next week. Not to talk about money, just to talk. Love, Laura. I read it twice. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't an epiphany. But it was something. I didn't answer right away. Let her sit with it, I thought. Let her wait the way I have waited. This time I wouldn't rush to ease her discomfort. This time she would have to earn the visit. Sunday came, soft and gray, with a wind that tapped gently at the windows, like a child asking to be let in. I spent the morning dusting the tops of shelves no one else ever noticed, rearranging the books I'd read too many times to part with. It was the kind of work that didn't demand much thought. And that's what I needed, because underneath everything, the letters, the accounts, the silence, there was still a kind of ache. Not regret, not even sadness, just the ache of being someone who had once been central and now lived mostly on the edges. I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. Not a visitor, a delivery. I opened the door to find a young man holding a large box, carefully sealed and marked perishable. He smiled and handed me the receipt. "It's a meal kit," he said. "All prepped. Just needs heating." I stared at it. "From who?" He checked the receipt. "Greg Sheehan. Says, 'With love.'" I didn't invite him in. Just nodded and took the box. Inside, I placed it on the table. Chicken parmesan, garlic bread, a bottle of mid-range red wine, and a note in Greg's handwriting. "We know things have been tense. Maybe dinner can be a bridge." I looked at the packaging, branded, neatly portioned, carefully curated. I stood there for a full minute, then quietly walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and slid the entire box onto the bottom shelf without unpacking it. Let it sit there. Let it wait. Later that day, I received a second message from Laura. "No pressure about meeting Mom. Just wanted you to know we're thinking of you. Boys drew some pictures for you. We'll send them soon. I didn't reply. I wasn't punishing her. I just needed space. For decades I jumped to reassure, to explain, to fix. Every little discomfort in the family became mine to soothe. Not anymore. Now they would learn the weight of their own silences. That evening I went to the drawer where I kept my stationery and pulled out a pale blue envelope. I wrote just 2 sentences. Emily, darling, tuition is handled and so are you. You'll never be left wondering where you stand with me. I placed it in the mail slot, picturing her reading it, knowing without a doubt she was my priority, that she wasn't caught in this to be pulled one way or the other. The house was still quiet, but I was no longer waiting for the silence to break. I was building something in it. Monday morning arrived with a brittle blue sky and a sun that only pretended to bring warmth. I stepped outside just long enough to bring in the mail, bundled in my coat and scarf, the air sharp on my cheeks. Inside the mailbox, among catalogs and a credit card offer I didn't need, was a thick envelope from Francis's office. I brought it to the kitchen table, made tea, and opened it with slow fingers. Inside were the finalized documents. The updated will, the trust paperwork for Emily, the official letters of revocation for previous financial authorizations. Each page crisp, precise, necessary. I signed them one by one. No hesitation, no tremble in the hand. When I was done, I called Francis. Everything looks correct, I said. I'll bring the originals this afternoon. He cleared his throat gently. You've handled this with rare clarity, Marlene. I'm done handing out clarity in whispers, I said. Now it's in writing. After lunch, I walked the documents to his office, dropping them off without ceremony. The receptionist, kind-faced and always a little too nervous, offered me a cookie from the tin on her desk. I took one. Oatmeal raisin. Just sweet enough. When I returned home, a package was waiting on the porch. Emily's handwriting on the label. Inside, a scarf she had knitted, 2 photographs of us from past holidays, and a small card. Thought you might want something soft for the cold days. I miss you already. Love, Em. I pressed the scarf to my face and inhaled. Lavender wool. A trace of her. That evening, I placed the signed documents in the fireproof box beneath my bed. My affairs were in order now. Not as a threat, but as protection. My voice preserved on paper. The next morning, I received a short email from Laura. No apologies this time. No warmth either. Mom, we've received word from Francis about the will and the trust. I don't really know what to say. I guess this is final then. Just one thing. Please don't let this divide the family more than it already has. The boys still need to see you as their grandmother, not someone who turned her back on us. I read it 3 times. Then I closed the laptop and whispered to the quiet around me. I didn't turn my back. I just stopped kneeling. She didn't knock this time. The car pulled up quietly around noon. A silver SUV, the same one they bought last year when Greg got his bonus and I co-signed the loan. I watched from the window as Laura stepped out alone, glancing once toward the house like she didn't know whether to come in or turn around. I opened the door before she reached it. Hi, she said. Come in, I answered, stepping aside. We didn't hug. She walked in like someone visiting a place she used to know, pausing slightly in the hallway, glancing at the photos still hanging there. Wedding portraits, baby pictures, school days. I hadn't taken any of them down. I didn't need to erase her to move forward. I just needed to stop pretending I didn't exist outside of her. I didn't bring the boys, she said. Thought it'd be better this way. I nodded. Probably. We sat in the living room. She didn't take off her coat. There was a long stretch of silence before she spoke. I've been trying to find the right way to talk to you, but it keeps coming out wrong. I didn't interrupt. She folded her hands, then unfolded them. I didn't think it mattered that much. Missing one Christmas. We'd been running around so much. Greg's parents wanted to host for once, And I thought maybe you'd be relieved. Relieved? I asked. To not have to do all the work. To not cook, clean, host. I thought I was doing you a favor. I studied her face. Then why didn't you say that? She looked down. Because I knew it wasn't true. Not really. We sat quietly for another moment. Then I asked, why didn't you tell the boys? Her voice lowered. I didn't want to make you the bad guy. I see. She winced at that. I didn't come to argue, she said softly. I came because I think you're right. That stopped me. You are, she continued. I've treated your help like a given. Not maliciously, not even consciously. But I did. And Greg did. We expected it. We forgot it came from somewhere. From someone. I said nothing. We're scared, she admitted, voice shaking now. The mortgage, the school fees. We've never been good with planning. I guess we always thought there'd be more time. Time doesn't replenish, I said. Not like money. She nodded. I've felt the distance before, but I never thought it would close around me. I looked at her then. Not the daughter I had once held in my arms, but the woman sitting here now, frightened, confronted. I didn't change the will to punish you, I said. I changed it because I finally realized what love should cost, and what it shouldn't. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't wipe them. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You don't, I said gently. You accept that it's different now. And then you show up. Not with gifts, not with calls when the account goes quiet. You show up as a daughter, not a dependent. She nodded slowly. I can try, she said. Trying isn't asking to be taken back, I said. It's asking to be let in again. For the first time in years she really listened, and I let the silence finish the rest. January drifted in with its usual grayness, but this year it felt less like an end and more like a clearing. The house was quiet, yes, but no longer echoing with disappointment. Just calm, just air and warmth in me. I saw Emily twice that week. She brought over a puzzle we did together at the kitchen table, like we used to when she was little. 1,000 pieces. Took us 3 evenings. On the last night, we stayed up past midnight, laughing over missing corners and tea gone cold. She didn't mention her parents and I didn't ask. A few days later, Laura sent a postcard from their weekend trip to the mountains. No explanations, no complaints, just a photo of the snow and 3 words. Thinking of you. That was enough. I didn't need a complete rewrite of the past. I just needed space to write my own ending. The lawyer confirmed everything was filed, notarized, and recorded. Emily's trust was active. My choices were protected. There would be no misunderstandings. Greg never called again. Laura still texted tentatively. I answered sometimes. And one evening I sat with a cup of chamomile tea, the lights low, the house warm, and thought to myself, not bitterly, not sadly, just clearly, I had given them enough, more than enough. What I had left I would give to myself and to the ones who truly saw me. Maybe that's what aging is, in the end. Not shrinking but returning to size. The size you were before you bent to make room for others. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt yourself getting smaller to stay loved, to stay needed, to stay safe, then let me say this plainly. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to keep handing over your piece to stay included. You don't have to be anyone's silent certainty. Let them wonder where the warmth went. Let them feel the cold they left you in. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to find your voice again? How did you reclaim your space and your peace? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.